Assalamualaikum, welcome back to Experiencing Design Kuala Lumpur. Aku Mohsin and today we'll talk about feedback.
Welcome to Experiencing Design Kuala Lumpur, a design podcast where we discuss design and psychology related topics from our daily life experiences living here in Kuala Lumpur.
Feedback or maklum balas, the one that we'll talk about is not the kind yang kita pergi customer service, kita bagi tahu dia what we like, nak buat complain or anything. No, it's not that kind. What we talk about is something that is discussed in this book, The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman, which is a book I really recommend for all of you to read. And in this book, they talk about a lot of human-centered design principles, and one of it is feedback. So the feedback that they mean is actually the feedback from our interactions with our products, the products that we deal with in every day of our lives. So how can a product interact with us kan? So if we look at our phones kan, bila ada notification masuk, it berbagi tahu kita message dah masuk, somebody is texting us. When I click a button on my laptop, dia bagi tahu okay, save is successful. So that is how we interact, and that is the feedback that our products tell us. Why is this important? It's important because humans, we learn through feedbacks. Masa kita kecil pun, when we go to our schools, we do our homeworks and we go to our teachers and we show our work, and teachers will tell us the feedback whether what we did was right, ni buat salah ke, buat betul ke, yang ni kena betulkan, and we learn through that way. And the same way of interaction we expect to happen between us and the products. So contohnya when I click save on the laptop, I will want the laptop to tell me whether it's saved or not, whether there's a problem in saving, whether it's taking some time to save. Sebab otherwise I will not know what is happening because everything happens in the background, right? So that is why users really like getting feedback. And to illustrate, untuk tunjuk why feedback ni is so important for user experience, let's imagine a situation where there's no feedback at all. Going back to the school example, kita jumpa cikgu kita tunjuk homework. Bila kita tunjuk cikgu homework, we expect cikgu tu tunjuk apa yang betul salah and interact dengan kita normally kan. Tapi let's say cikgu tu langsung tak pandang kita, langsung tak angkat kepala, no response at all, dia teruskan buat kerja dia, zero response. What will happen? Kita akan rasa macam cikgu tak dengar ke, and we will try again. That's the first step, kita akan try again. So that's already an extra step yang patutnya doesn't happen if cikgu tu respond immediately, bagi feedback immediately. So kita try again, panggil maybe dengan suara yang lagi kuat. So if cikgu tu pandang kita the second time, so we know that the first time dia tak dengar. But what if even kita dah kuatkan suara kita, kita dah lambai kat cikgu tu pun, and the teacher still does not react in any way? This will lead us to the next step, which is we will abandon the task. This is the behavioral part lah. Kita pun stop lah, kita balik kat meja kita ke. But emotionally, at that time, kita akan assume, start fikir, and we will start feeling bad. Cikgu tak suka aku ke? Did I do something wrong? So apart from that behavioral part, emotionally kita tak rasa happy. And the same process happens, the same emotional roller coaster happens bila produk tak give us feedback. Let me give you an example. Usually kita nak naik lift, kita akan tekan butang, either atas atau bawah kan. If there's a feedback, lampu akan menyala and we know that message is communicated, lift is coming to you. But if there is no feedback, lampu tak menyala, first kita akan try again sebab maybe the first time was not wrong. So we already add an extra step, which is to try again. Bila kita tekan lagi sekali, if dia menyala, then we know the first time salah, now okay, so problem solved. Tapi what if still lampu tu tak menyala? Kita akan abandon the task. Kita akan terus behaviorally kita akan terus naik tangga or something, or lari ke tempat lain cari lift lain or something. But emotionally, this is a bad feeling, bad experience. Lift ni rosak pula apa semua, and you start thinking. And let's say that this situation happens bila kita tengah rushing. That can be a really bad experience. Kita rasa macam all days, hari ni pula lift ni nak rosak, and we feel bad. Tak pasal-pasal I have to take the stairs now, naik ke atas, how many floors we don't know kan. So that is all a really bad experience. And to make it worse, bila kita sampai atas, tengok-tengok lift jalan okay je, turns out lampu tak menyala je. And that feedback, that lack of feedback has caused us a really bad experience sebab it works, the lift works, but it does not tell us that it works. So that is why feedback is so important. So, as designers, how can we design feedback? As I've said just now, feedback is basically our products communicating with the users, telling them what has happened kan. So it's communication, and communication can go through a lot of mediums. So it can be either visual form. So for example, in screens, message pops up, that is visual. It can also be sound based. In terms of sound, maybe it's a beep, maybe it's an alarm sound, maybe it's a PA announcement, maybe it's a ringtone. That is all the kind of feedback that is through sound. And it can also be other mediums such as haptic. So our phones now, when we press the silent mode, it will automatically vibrate, telling us that the phone is now in vibrate mode. All of these are feedbacks. It basically communicates to the user that something is happening. But as it is with all communication, the message must reach the other person and the other party. So kalau message tak sampai, basically feedback tu tak ada guna. So how can we design a good feedback? So to design a good feedback, we should follow these 3 principles of feedback design. The first thing is feedback should be perceptible. Maknanya if we design a visual feedback, it should be able to be seen. Kalau kita design a sound feedback, it should be able to be heard. So benda-benda macam ni orang kena sedar, because let's say kita cakap dengan orang and orang tak dengar apa kita cakap pun, it doesn't work, right? So as an example, let's say we talk about the elevator just now. If ada lampu tu tapi lampu tu malap sangat, it's so dim that I cannot see it, I will still assume that the elevator is broken and I will still take the stairs instead. So that is the kind of feedback that doesn't work because it's not perceptible. That's the first part. The second principle of feedback design is it should be understood. Kalau kita cakap dengan orang and people don't understand us, the message still does not reach them. We hear a lot about people driving with cars. When there's a light popping up on the dashboard, there's something wrong. Sometimes we as normal drivers, kita tak faham all the technical symbols yang kereta tu tunjuk. If we don't understand it, although we can see it, the message does not reach us. Let's say lampu yang tunjuk tu is actually telling us yang tayar kita ada problem and tak cukup angin. And we don't understand it and we keep on driving. What happens? Tayar tu akan makin kempis and eventually akan rosakkan rim kita. And it becomes a bigger problem than it actually was, just because the message was not understood by us. So that is the second one, feedback should be understood. And the third one, feedback should be instant. Why do we say this? Is because again, feedback is a communication. Bila kita borak dengan orang, let's say aku cakap hi, and then like after a few seconds baru orang cakap hi. The silence is awkward, it's uncomfortable. So when we talk with our products, it's supposed to be instant, just like human punya communication, right? So we understand that not everything can be instant. For example, I'm trying to save a big file and it takes longer than a few seconds untuk save it. But even kita sebagai manusia, bila kita tengah busy and orang cakap hi kat kita, we don't ignore them sampai kita free baru kita reply. Kita akan at least masa dia cakap hi tu, kita terus cakap sorry kejap aku busy, sekejap lagi kita borak. That feedback is still instant, although we delay the activity for a little bit. So even for product design, bila benda tu makan masa sikit, that feedback should still be instant. At least kita attend to the user almost immediately. There's a guideline in digital product design called the Doherty threshold that says that productivity when dealing with digital product, it soars when the feedback is within 400 millisecond. That's how instant it should be. So kalau kita delay lebih daripada 400 millisecond, the user might again abandon the task, buat benda lain, ataupun they might feel bad about it, they feel that something is wrong, that they did something wrong. So this is the kind of bad experience yang we try to avoid when designing our products lah. So to recap, there's 3 design principles for feedback design. First is the feedback should be perceptible, the feedback should be understood, and the third one, the feedback should be instant. There are situations when feedback can be dangerous. If the feedback is not perceptible, it can lead to injury. Contohnya, let's talk about kettle, especially kettle yang lama kan. The purpose of a kettle is to boil water. When we boil water, it should tell us that the water is boiled. And it does, basically, bila air tu dah boil, bila kita pegang, dia panas. But it's not as perceptible sebab we don't always pegang benda air panas and we are scared. At the looks of it, kettle, sejuk ke panas, it looks still the same. So the feedback is not perceptible. Maybe what we can do is, as long as it's hot, there will be a light on. Or maybe there's that temperature punya sticker. If it's hot, it turns red. So it can be something like that to make the feedback more perceptible. And second, when a feedback is not understood, there's this really serious case on human factors and economics. I think a nuclear punya power plant has a problem, and there's an alarm. The feedback is definitely perceptible. Alarm kuat. And the person knows that there is something wrong. But the sound itself, it doesn't tell the people who are maintaining the plant where is the problem, what is the problem and how to solve it. Dia tak bagi enough information except that there is a problem. Bila jadi macam ni, people can get panicky and they cannot do their task well, and eventually I think there was a leak or something, and I'm not sure if any lives were involved, but it could have been sebab the feedback was not really well designed and it did not help with solving the problem lah. And the third part is the feedback should be instant. Let's talk back about cars. A lot of cars now have the rear reverse sensor kan. I think I've heard it way too many times, especially in a few years back when the reverse sensor was supposed to tell us when we are nearing an object. But if it's not instant, bila kita dah dekat, dia tak terus bunyi, kita akan keep on reversing and end up dia akan bunyi just bila kita dah start langgar belakang. So bumper pun dah rosak kan. And it becomes a much bigger problem if the feedback was not instant lah. So these are some examples why feedback should be well designed, and I think the main takeaway here especially is stated here in this book that a poorly designed feedback is much worse than having no feedback at all. So that is it for this episode. I hope you understand what feedback is now and how to design a good feedback, principles of feedback design, that feedback should be perceptible, feedback should be understood, feedback should be instant. If it's too hard to remember those three things, at least remember that feedback is communication, and however we communicate with other people, a good communication, that is how our devices should communicate with our users. That is all for this episode. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and also follow us on Instagram and TikTok, and hopefully soon Spotify. So thank you so much for watching. Ciao.